What's going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. Today was a very interesting day. I want to break it down on what caused the sell-off and volatility today, what the current data points are saying, as well as what shorts did. Before I get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. SoFi closed at 0.28% in the red, 697 the low, 722 is the high. Once I go over the technicals near the tail end, it'll make a little bit more sense why it bounced off of this general area today. But for volume, 29.5 million shares were traded, 52 is the average. These are the transactions that did occur on the secondary market today. So you didn't really see that big of an institutional presence. So a lot of the volume being kind of done today was algorithmic trading, and a lot of that negative sentiment was being extended from the manufacturing data from yesterday. So this is where now people are saying, you know what, a lot of the data that's been coming out, so manufacturing, PCE from last week, and many other data points are all showing that the economy is relatively strong. So now people are correlating that with, well, you know what, Powell might not need to cut the rates as much as previously thought. So in reality, that has been one of the main attributes of a lot of growth stocks being propelled higher, is just the hope on rate cuts. So as soon as that kind of gets popped, then you are going to see a significant sell-off. In fact, I did say that on my video on Sunday, saying that the first sign of cracks, or just, I guess, essentially just the bubble popping on the hope of rate cuts, you are going to see SoFi alongside other stocks pull back. So ultimately, that is what happened today. When it comes to data points, or I guess more so PR, there was one thing that did come out first thing. So they officially said that April 29th, 2024 at 8 a.m. Eastern is going to be their Q1 earnings. So I think that's pretty good. Although a lot of people and their dog, like everyone seemed to know it was April 29th, with the exception of myself. But still, it's good to be formal and put this out there. So hopefully 2 weeks prior, as usually what does happen, you'll have more of a build-up in the stock price as FOMO kind of kicks in. And then no doubtably, whatever happens from their earnings, which I think is going to be good, there'll probably be a sell-off. That's just what happens time and time again. But aside from this, though, going back to the institutions buying, so good old Cathie Woods did buy some shares yesterday. So she turned on the switch essentially back on, because I think it's been a good 2-3 weeks or 3 weeks more or whatever since she started to buy. But I started to think maybe she is a very bad omen. And I know that might be sounding very weird, but if you think about it, ever since she started to get really involved with SoFi, Palantir, she bought a ton of shares of Tesla yesterday, in fact. So everything that she seems to be touching is very just poorly performing. And the only reason why I bring this up is a lot of people seem to have her on a pedestal for some reason. But there was this post, and it kind of just made me think about good old Warren Buffett. Everyone likes him, loves his mentality on investing. But when it comes down to Cathie Woods, I think a lot of people just propel her, just think that she's the next big thing, especially her Bitcoin predictions recently. I don't know. I think she's on something, or I'm not really sure exactly what. But you can kind of see exactly here. So ever since, I guess, January 2021 up until the present, give or take, just comparing the two, Cathie Woods has been wrong time and time again. And so when it comes to her backing out the bus with SoFi, a lot of people might seem to think that's a good catalyst. Me, on the other hand, I don't think so. So make sure you guys always do your own due diligence ultimately, but I don't feel that she is that good. So her buying into SoFi might be probably the death sentence. I think she's the new age, maybe Jim Cramer, or maybe not. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that in the comments below? When it comes down to SoFi's stock performance, though, I also did see a tweet, very interesting one by Data Driven Investing. So he kind of talks on two different variations or scenarios. One is buy damaged stocks. So that is where the underlying stock does have good growth, good revenue, but the stock price does go down. Then it says avoid damaged stocks. So this is where the revenue and also stock price goes down. So I feel like this is good, but at the same time, it is very discouraging, because a lot of people like to say that they are investors, diehards, like through thick and thin and everything. But if that is the case, when it comes to stocks such as SoFi, yeah, revenue, the fundamental operations continues to grow and go up, but ultimately the share price, which is what a lot of investors truly care about, some of you might say otherwise, but then you're kind of lying to yourself. Everyone wants the stock price to go up, right? Nobody wants to essentially lose money. So if you are a true investor and you've been investing, for instance, since, I don't know, like 2022, just throwing that out there, you'd be down quite a lot. So yes, this mentality is good. So buy damaged stocks, but I also do feel that you cannot fall in love with a stock, because sometimes, even recently, I did signal that there was going to be a very significant pullback. So I did liquidate my position, and then you buy lower. So yes, I think data-driven investing and many others like to be true long-term investors, but coming from, I guess, SoFi's standpoint, it is very discouraging, because even like when it comes down to today itself, it keeps bouncing off of very strong resistance points. So every time it comes down to SoFi needing to break out, it's always lackluster. So I'm going to talk on the technicals, and that'll make a little bit more sense. But I found this kind of post very, very interesting. So what's your thoughts? Do you think that this is a right mentality just to kind of buy damaged stocks? Or do you think that they should be more timed essentially? Or what's your viewpoint, I guess, overall just on SoFi and things like that? What is your investing style? Looking at shorts though, they did return 1.64 million shares. 20.13% of the free float is being shorted, and that works out to be 198.37 million shares overall are being shorted. Utilization is 68.04. So with shorts returning 1.64 million and SoFi being red today, kind of signals that today was an overreaction. So in my opinion, I see that as kind of a good positive. Looking at options though, there was $3.49 million in calls being purchased versus 2.91 million in puts. Sentiment wise, 45% of all the options being done today were optimistic, and of the call options that were purchased, you do see a consensus for it to be above roughly about 750. So a lot of optimism when it comes down to that. And then looking at puts, a large consensus for it to be sub $7. So when it comes down to SoFi and its technicals, so with it closing at $7.20, it is between this S1 and this pivot. So $7.19 was so far throughout the trading day one of those points that kept bouncing off of, as you can kind of see right here. Over here briefly broke past, but still it does always fail to really get above those kind of strong resistance points. And over this last little bit, it's always been orienting towards more so the downside. So you do see today, in fact, it kind of broke past both the S2 and the S1 and started to trade between this S3 and this S2. So SoFi is just plain as day, not really having the institutional backing. And a lot of people might say, well, you know what, those institutions are manipulating SoFi. In reality, I don't think there's ever been a stock that is primarily held by retail that has been successful. So you do need that institutional backing. I know some people might not like that, but plain as day, that's what you need. This is why you get so much volatility, and why, more common than not, it does typically trend down and fails to really hold good support levels. So unfortunately, today was a very good example of that. Just the fact that you do need institutions, and that in reality, it is pointing to more so it heading back into the sixes once again. So I know SoFi did fight back fairly well today, but still, Cathie Woods cannot be the only individual out there buying a large sum of shares, even though she might be a bad omen and whatever. But I think right now the technicals are playing a very big part in SoFi's movement, and so far the technicals haven't been that optimistic. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi in the comments below. Looking on the actual chart though, today was more of another consolidation, so it did fail to, well, in all honesty, it didn't even attempt to transition into the higher percentile, so more so just consolidation. Today, looking at stochastic, no defined trend, but it is at 44, so somewhat neutral, not considered overbought nor oversold. Number of retail investors were getting in, and that's been the case over this last little bit. So as institutions have been kind of avoiding SoFi, you do see retail increasing their position. So they know what they hold. They know, essentially, going back over here, that the revenue and the main metrics will continue to grow despite the underlying stock really going down. So I think this is a very good representation of exactly what SoFi does encumber. But coming from a long investor standpoint, it is very discouraging to know the stock that you do hold is amazing and is going to be doing a hell of a lot of good things, but the stock price will not always correlate with that. So all in all, I just wanted to break it down on what really happened today, what the data points are saying, and why SoFi does fail to break out behind the scenes. So let me know your thoughts. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with SoFi? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with all that said, appreciate all of you watching.